All right, welcome into episode 3 of Unsafe Spaces. I'm Randy Cross. Brian Stan is traveling the world, was just in Brazil for the UFC and is now on his way down to New Zealand. So he won't be with us this week and we'll be guestless. So it'll be just me doing this whole thing, and we'll check in on the week that was, or maybe some of the stuff that was going to be, and a little over a dozen of the stories that tickled our fancy in general. And number one is, for me, something that I've really noticed, and I mean really noticed, over the course of the last several years, is what I like to call sort of victimhood. And to some degree, the victimhood being sort of the new superhero. Because it's one thing to do something wrong. It's one thing to say something wrong. And I think the best example that we've had of late might be, well, sort of the other Cheeto. You know, everyone likes to call President Trump sort of a Cheeto hair guy. You know, the marchers in Washington did, and, you know, whether it was Madonna or Judd or whoever. But Kathy Griffin's pretty doggone close to the other Cheeto. And this week, Alec Baldwin came out and supported her. I'm not sure what he was supporting her for, though, because her press conference with her attorney was rather otherworldly. Because suddenly you went from somebody that was holding up the severed head of a individual who happens to be the president, which the Secret Service usually doesn't take that really well. And 2 days later, after an apology, you're at a press conference and you're basically playing the victim. And all I'm wanting to point out here is that's not unusual. People were outraged, but I think you need to check yourself, because everybody these days is a flipping victim these days. They do some unbelievable stuff. I mean, look at Alec Baldwin at times. People criticize when he does the president on Saturday Night Live. Hey, that's part of the deal. When you do stuff like that, people aren't going to like it. So, yeah, I think the whole idea of being a victim, whether you're a celebrity like a Kathy Griffin or an Alec Baldwin or anybody, you know, it's something that you got to get out of that mentality. You're not a victim. Be responsible. Be responsible for your words. Be responsible for your actions. You know, it's one of the great things about sports is, you know what? The result is a result. You can make excuses, but probably more than anywhere else, you don't have many victims, because you're a winner or you're a loser. Now, you can act like a victim when you're a loser, but then you're just a bigger loser. All right, we'll move into right now. Heck, it's my favorite part of the show. It's something we do every week, and it's what we call the butt hurt of the week with our favorite matador. Ah, yes. At least somewhere, somehow, every week, the bull wins, at least on this show. Number one is, I have on my butt hurt of the week, is the NBA Finals. And if you've been keeping up with the NBA Finals, a lot of anticipation in that everyone wanted to see Cleveland and Golden State play. Well, both these games haven't been much of a game. It's been a case of Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry and, you know, Klay Thompson, Iguodala, go down the list. Golden State has used Cleveland so far. And they're actually making a fairly sympathetic figure out of LeBron James. So far, after 2 games in the NBA Finals, our butt hurt of the week does go to the Cleveland Cavaliers as a group. Now, if anybody's going to carry the trophy off by himself, it might be LeBron James. But I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that this time last year, Cleveland was down 2-0 to Golden State. So pump the brakes. Don't get too panicky or overly excited. But, you know, butt hurt of the week, number one, I think the NBA in general, hopefully they're not going to be too crazy about how this all goes. They're going to play a game every 3 or 4 days. And even if it goes 4 games, it's going to take at least 2 weeks to do the NBA Finals. That's fine with me. They're great games, and it's unbelievably fun to watch. Next up on our Butthurt of the Week, and it's not so much the guy we're going to focus on, but it's sort of everybody observing and around him. And I'm talking about Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, when he got his driving under the influence, or DUI, many things were said about Tiger. Many observations were made about Tiger. The New York Times had an article that, you really don't know Tiger Woods. You don't know what this guy's been through. And we've seen innumerable pictures like that, the perp walk type pictures. You've got to hope this guy gets his stuff together. And that is it, period. Nothing else is really your business. He was a very public figure. He failed very, very publicly between his marriage and his golf game. And now, because of his bad back, because of a lot of things, he is doing some crazy stuff. I personally, I hope the guy makes a comeback. Will he ever be Tiger Woods, the great golfer again? Hell no. What are you, crazy? But you need to have guys like this, especially in a sport like golf. They bring people to stand behind the ropes. They make people turn on the TV. I really hope Tiger Woods gets a chance to get back on tour. But odds are, with that back, number one goal, get off all the medication. Get off all the junk you're putting into your body. Because then you'd have less people around you that are kind of haters, that are really, ultimately, they're kind of butthurt. Hey, number 3 on our list is, now we're back at golf again, but it's mainly kind of the golf hazard that time forgot. Let's put it that way. We had an instance this week, and video came out of a 12-foot alligator. Yeah, that's right. A 12-foot alligator down in South Carolina coming onto the course and kind of driving the crowd a little crazy. Look at this. Hey, the birds are singing. How smart are those deer in the background? Those deer don't want any part of that alligator because he will eat them. Now, in this article that accompanied this video, they did mention that golfers had to be told that it wasn't a good idea to disturb the alligator as he was going from one pond to the other pond. It's a freaking 12-foot alligator. Who's going to get in his way and stop him? What are you, nuts? Yeah, but you have to remember something very, very important. If you do run into an alligator, there are chances you could run into him on the golf course. You could run into him in a pond. You could run into them anywhere around in nature, and you can also run into them in a tree. Yes, that is an alligator on that limb. Alligators climb trees. In case you didn't know that, that made me extremely butthurt. Because I always thought, not to steal a line, I think it was Alan Arkin in the old In-Laws movie, about serpentine. Yeah, they don't run sideways very well. So if you run away from an alligator, run, in a jogging back and forth kind of pattern, because they only go straight ahead fast. But how do you avoid one if you're in a tree? And what do you do when you climb a tree to get away from an alligator and he climbs the same tree? Good luck. All right. Number 4 on our Butthurt of the Week is a Korean professional baseball pitcher. And this is easily the worst wild pitch you will ever see. You ever hear that, sometimes pitchers say, well, the ball just slipped, it got away. I accidentally plunked the guy. Look at that. And the best reaction is his manager in the background there. He loves it. He's cracking up. You can't even, it won't even stay in the shot. He threw that ball over the screen. Look at the angle that ball leaves his hand at. That was a memento from the time he let it go. That ended up in the crowd behind and just entertained the hell out of his manager and teammates in the dugout. You can only imagine what that was like. But that picture right there, he was our butthurt of the week. One of the butthurt of the week. And probably my least favorite one, only from the standpoint of making you kind of uncomfortable, but I'm going to make you uncomfortable anyway, is a product that was released recently. Of course, around the election, a lot of products come out, mugs and all sorts of different things. Well, here's one you might not have seen, and that is a presidential version. Yes, that you read that right. It's a Trump butt plug. Not safe for work. Absolutely, it is not. But people find this hilarious. It escapes me as to why this would be hilarious. He seems to be missing arms, which I thought was very strange, and my inquiring mind wanted to wonder why it didn't have arms, and then I remembered what it was for. But anyway, number 5, and our winner in the butt hurt of the week category is that right there. All right, that's it for butt hurt of the week. What we normally do from here is we take a break, but we're going to keep right on going, considering it's just me, myself, and I, and we'll go right into real world news. Here you go is a news story that I came across just yesterday. Something going on that I had no idea. And this is something that was actually in Washington. So when it happened, it caught my attention. And it's called Operation Extra Olives. And no, it is not about martinis. This is about pizza. And, you know, you've heard of in the past, there have been ingenious ideas of how to smuggle drugs, whether it's airlines, you know, in the walls of some airline carriers, down in the luggage departments. They get very, very creative. Well, here's something that was kind of creative, but seemed pretty simple. And that was, there was a Papa John's pizza. And I was wrong about Washington, D.C. That's Seattle, Washington. That you would order a pizza and they would sell cocaine. So you'd go pick up your pizza and in the box would be cocaine. Okay. Lasted for a while, but you can't fool the feds forever. The only thing probably, you know, more predictable than being able to fool them for short term is the fact that somebody's going to rat you out eventually. And that's what happened here. And they figured out that Operation Extra Olives was going to ferret out everything that was going on. And they busted this particular Papa John's pizza up there in Washington State. Number 2 in our real world news, and that's something that's dominated all the world news. All the U.S. news, European, Russia. Megyn Kelly of Now NBC did an interview with Vladimir Putin. And we in the U.S. think that our politicians can be a little duplicitous, that they can be a little overly simplistic. They can word craft, which is a really nice way of saying lie to your face. Well, our guy's got nothing on Vladimir Putin. Because in this interview, Megyn Kelly asked all the right questions.
A special counsel has been appointed to investigate contacts between your government and the Trump campaign. You've said that your ambassador, Kislyak, was just doing his job, right? So what exactly was discussed in those meetings?
There were no meetings. You understand? There were no meetings. When I saw this, my jaw dropped.
No meetings between Ambassador Kislyak and anybody from the Trump campaign?
I have no idea. I'm being completely honest with you. I don't know. The routine job of an ambassador. Do you think that from all over the world or from the United States, The ambassador reports to me every day who he meets with or what they discuss there. That's complete nonsense. Do you even understand what you're asking
Well,
or
you're
not?
his boss.
Listen, his boss is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Do you think that I have time to talk to our ambassadors every day, all over the world? Complete nonsense.
But I tell you what, when you have control, you have control. And in Russia, even the pigeons salute Vladimir Putin. I feel for any journalist that has to deal with this guy. Heck, I feel for every pigeon that's got to deal with this guy. He seems like just a stone cold psychopath. But, he is the guy you got to deal with. And it's going to be interesting, but our guys have nothing. We have got nothing as a party or as anything else on this guy, because this guy also doesn't answer a question. Not only does he not answer a question, he spins it around and then starts accusing you. Can't say you should be really, really surprised about that. Hey, back to number 3 on the list, and number 3 is a feel-good story. And it's about Phil Mickelson, the golfer. And it was announced, I guess it was last week during the last tournament, that he was not going to play in the U.S. Open. He is the commencement speaker at his daughter's high school graduation. And he is not going to play in the U.S. Open at Erin Hills because he is going to be there for his family. How refreshing is that? I can't tell you enough how I would love to see that. And that reminds me a lot of the same thing for me as to why I moved out of Northern California, why I moved out of California, period. Ended up coming down to Georgia, coming here to Atlanta, is I wanted to see my kids grow up. And I think stories like this should be praised. Stories like this, we should hear more of them. Because, these are core values. It's a fantastic thing to do. We've got to take more time to be with our kids. We've got to take more time to make these moments special. Now, I'm not talking about a daycare graduation. I'm not talking about kindergarten graduation. I'm not talking about grammar school graduation. High school graduation is kind of a big deal. You're moving your friends, you're losing your friends, you're going on with your life, you're going to college in a lot of cases. And it's very important to have your family there. And Phil, as you can see, is quite the family man. And he and his wife, Amy, have been through some tough times. Amy had breast cancer a few years back. But Phil's a guy to be applauded, and he's a guy to be praised for what he's doing. I think it's fantastic stuff. Next up on the real world news list is college football players. Should they be allowed to test the waters of professional football? And that's an old question. And players are eligible. You leave high school. You're not eligible for the NFL draft until you've been out of high school and in the college game for 3 years. And that clock starts as soon as you commit to a school or you actually enroll in a school. So you've got 3 years. And after that third year, whether it's your junior year or your redshirt sophomore year, they're proposing, or they're trying to propose, that you should be able to get a look into your prospects as an NFL player, that you should be able to be evaluated and given a realistic look. And I'm talking about a realistic look, because much like league stuff, little league stuff, Pop Warner stuff, high school football and whatnot, there's one factor that usually ruins a lot of things, and that's the adults. The parents, the helicopter moms and dads. The Ball family has got sort of the market on that covered right now, but in basketball. But if you look at it realistically, the adults are the only ones that can't be trusted, because agents want to get their hooks into these players. And that's what the NFL and that's what college football is concerned about, is being able to protect players and still be able to get that information out. This is something that needs to be done. This is something that needs to be looked into, because these kids need to be able to look down the road and get a realistic look, and only if it's realistic, because every agent's going to tell a kid he's a first or third rounder. Are you really going to try to have a guy hire you and you tell him he won't be drafted until the 5th or 6th round? You know, let's look at this realistically. 250 odd players are drafted every year right now. 250. There are almost 130 FBS, major college football teams. Another 125, 140 FCS type teams. Think of that and the number of people coming in. We're talking thousands of people in the pool. And there was only 250-ish or so drafted. Look at those odds. Now, if they can give them a realistic look in, and you can look at it without too much prejudice, because you're always going to have some form of prejudice, let's give these kids a chance to either go back and get another year of education or go ahead, cut the cord. And there were literally, you know, about 1,000, 1,200 guys that were eligible this year, about 1,000. Most of which weren't drafted, most of which were signed as free agents, and then a lot of them weren't even signed as free agents, but they can't go back. That's not right. That's not right. Those players should be able to continue their education and be eligible to come back, but the problem's going to be the agents. The problem's going to be the money. And they think they've solved the problem with that whole cost of attendance stipend type thing that they're doing now in college football. The problem is agents advance guys money for cars, they advance guys money for training, they advance guys money for living. How are you going to make up that difference? And if a player takes that money, that obviously makes him automatically ineligible. In the ideal world, you just be able to cut out the agents. But sadly, I don't think you're going to be able to. Next up on the real world news is something that happened. Actually, Brian Stan called this fight down in Brazil. It was Max Holloway versus Jose Aldo. It was the featherweight UFC title fight. 145 pounds, for those of you that aren't familiar with the UFC version of a featherweight. 145 pounds. It was a great fight that ended in the third round a little unexpectedly because Max Holloway just KO'd Jose Aldo. Aldo got snookered. Look at that fight. Don't you love it when photographers capture that moment? And that may not be the one that actually put him to sleep, but there's kind of a hole in your head it's hard to recover from when you get punched like that. And Max Holloway had the statement after the fact that this is now a blessed era in the UFC of him being the champ, which I'm okay with that. We don't hear people being blessed very often. We don't hear of people being a factor in being blessed very often. Welcome, Max. Hope you're a great champ. Hope you represent your sport and what you're trying to represent extremely well. Wishing you only the best. All right, next up, we're going to move this thing right along to telling people in general, or some people in general, that they should just shut the hell up and send out some of what we call our shut the hell up-ograms. I like that. Yeah, how can you not? How can you not kind of enjoy? Isn't that sort of a visceral thing that eventually, even if you're the nicest person in the world, sometimes you just got to tell somebody to shut up. And or as a group, when you're all at dinner or you're sitting around in your backyard here, the nice time of the year, and you're sipping on your favorite beverage, and somebody brings up a subject, and somebody on your right looks at you and goes, "Wouldn't you like to send them a shut the hell up-ogram?" Well, here's a couple shut the hell up-ograms, and we're going to start off in Seattle, Washington. Not one of the hotbeds of heat training in America. Of course, running back Eddie Lacy came from the Green Bay Packers, also not a hotbed of heat training, but it does get kind of warm up there in the summer. Very, very humid. And Eddie's got some weight issues. And earth to Eddie Lacy, you're a professional athlete. I think part of that is staying in shape. But Eddie's got some interesting thoughts on, weather and how it can help or hinder him.
Green Bay for you. Well, it's hotter. It rains a lot too, which that's different. But I love you too, bro. But I mean, I can't ask for like a better environment. When the sun's out, it's beautiful. Just makes you want to get out on the water and just hang out all day.
Eddie, I'll get a little piece of advice for you before you shut the hell up. When you're on that boat, leg squats. Keep moving. Don't get on that boat. Or if you're on that boat, swim. Get out. Keep exercising. Seattle's a fantastic place. But Eddie's a guy that, as a running back, can tend to get a little large. Some running backs have that problem. But, you're a pro. So I think if you want to complain about being in an area like that and getting to go out on your boat and enjoy the outdoors, I think you just ought to shut the hell up about it. Number 2 on our Shut the Hell Up parade. I've never had tattoos. I'm of the generation that struggles a little bit with the prevalence of how many people, prolific, I should say, people have tattoos. Hey, God bless you. That's your right. You want to do that? It is permanent, something you're always going to have. But what's the subject going to be? And you've seen everything. You've seen these gigantic eagles on people's backs. You've seen crosses. You've seen, pictures of the Virgin Mary, Jesus, a baby, whatever. And sometimes it's a memorial type thing. Sometimes it gets a little weird though. And this guy, he gets right in there with a little weird deal because he's an OU fan. For those of you who don't know OU, that would be Oklahoma University. And that is just a football hotbed. And he's a big Baker Mayfield fan. And he came up with this idea, he and his boys, that, you know what, maybe I ought to get a tattoo of Baker Mayfield. And he asked the question on Twitter. And who ends up chiming in? None other than, Baker Mayfield, who tells him, go for it, dude, only it's got to have the stash. All right. So this guy, he figures, Mr. Brightside, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get me that tattoo. And I'm going to put it on my calf. Not some of my calf. I'm talking about all of my calf. No offense, though, with that mustache. If those of you that are college football fans, that looks like Christian McCaffrey, the running back from Stanford, who's now in the NFL. That's Baker Mayfield, at least on hit this guy's leg for the rest of his life. And you may ask, well, how the heck did that story actually get out? How did we find out about this guy having the tattoo on his leg? Well, pretty simple. He got arrested. Ow, man, that had to hurt. Yeah. Oh, don't you love that music? That was a short-lived series on TV, the whole, Bad Boys. But, it's crazy. So to that guy, just shut the hell up. And if you're going to do something as permanent as that, you got to hope that you keep your pants on. You got to hope nobody notices your tattoo once you do get arrested. And a final shut the hell up, a gram out there for Theonis Wessels of Alberta, Canada. This guy was so focused, he was committed. It was focus personified. He was going to mow his dang backyard. He was going to get that job in. He had said, I'm going to do it on this Thursday, and that's my focus for the entire day. And no one's going to tell me differently. My neighbors, my wife, nobody. Because what happened to this guy is he's back there, but I believe it was his wife had the wherewithal, or at least the presence of mind, once the tornado warning came out, that there was a problem. And, that problem is right there. See that behind me? It was a tornado coming at their house, coming at their neighborhood. Did he stop mowing the lawn? No. Did he lose focus? Not a single time. That's staying on task, my friends. That's staying focused. And that, to me, that earns a shut the hell up, because that guy is out of his mind. A tornado. You ever been near a tornado? I have. I drove around once in Canyon, Texas, with my old buddy, the late John Ayers. He had a mobile home, and he was smart enough to point out that tornadoes eat mobile homes. So we got in the car and drove around. I thought that was a sensible thing to do until I started looking around Canyon, Texas, outside of Amarillo at that time. And we were surrounded by tornadoes. Everything worked out fine. But I try to stay as far away from those suckers as possible. Hey, that'll do it for Unsafe Spaces USA here in episode 3. Brian Stan will be back next week, done with his latest UFC stint down in New Zealand. Want to point out to you to keep on following us out there on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook. You can email me at randy@unsafespacesUSA.com. We're going to get this out on YouTube. We're actually going to also get it out on SoundCloud. And, we'll just got to say goodbye to you for right now, and wish you the happiest of trails.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.